Thank you very much, Madam President. Firstly, I would like to apologise for the state of my voice, although the President has assured me that I sound more manly and husky than usual, and so I hope that this will make up for any brief pauses or repetitions. I am sure you are all aware that we are gathered here tonight to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the most famous debate the Union has ever held. In 1933, after a fierce debate in front of a packed chamber, the Union shocked respectable society by carrying the motion this House would under no circumstances fight for king and country by 275 votes to 153. Standing in my position 80 years ago tonight was Kenham Digby, St John's College, whose great-nephew Pierce we are fortunate enough to have with us in the audience tonight. In the aftermath of the debate, the ISIS wrote of Digby that he had a thub-tumping style of oratory which would be more appreciated in Hyde Park than in the Union. I hope I may receive a slightly kinder epithet. Firstly, though, as the opening speaker, it falls upon me to introduce our guests tonight. Speaking alongside me for the proposition, we have firstly Ben Griffin, former SAS trooper and founder of Veterans for Peace UK. Mr. Griffin fought in Iraq, but refused to return for a second tour, citing the brutality of US soldiers against Iraqi civilians. Expecting to be court-martialed, he was instead released as his commanding officer heaped praise upon him for his skill and bravery. To round up our case is Mr. Gareth Porter, one of the most prominent anti-war activists in the United States. Mr. Porter is a journalist and historian who has been active in opposing Western military intervention since the Vietnam War. In 2012, Mr. Porter received the Martha Gellhorn Prize for Investigative Journalism, which in 2011 was awarded to another one of the Union's more recent guests, Julian Assange. To begin the case for side proposition, we are joined by the MP for Penrith and the Border, Mr. Rory Stewart. It is not overly surprising to find Mr. Stewart sitting on the opposition bench this evening, as he has been employed by Her Majesty the Queen in no less than 4 different capacities: as an MP, as a former reserve soldier, as a diplomat serving in Iraq, and as a summer tutor to her grandsons, Princes William and Harry. Mr. Stewart has also written several books, including one about his 30-day solo walk across Afghanistan and another about his time working for the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq, where he was in charge of a compound during its siege by Sadrist militia. Following him will be Count Nikolai Tolstoy, head of the Constitutional Monarchy Association and distant relation of Leo. In between writing extensively on the forced repatriation of Russians after World War II, Count Tolstoy has also found time to stand as the UKIP parliamentary candidate for Witney, opposing David Cameron in 2010. To round up the debate, we have none other than Sir Malcolm Rifkind, the Member of Parliament for Kensington. Sir Malcolm is the current chairman of the Intelligence and Security Committee and served as both Defence and Foreign Secretaries under John Major. His glittering career reached an all-time high, however, last term, when he was invited to speak at the Christchurch History Society, where I found out firsthand how uncannily like Sean Connery he really does sound. We thank him again for returning to Oxford. Madam President, these are your guest speakers, and they are most welcome. Now on to my speech. This evening I have 2 points. Firstly, how the illusionary nature of Queen and country makes us fight for the wrong reasons, because the concept of Queen and country is not substantive, it means nothing. Secondly, what is particularly pernicious and insidious about fighting under the banner of Queen and country? Now on to my definition. I am neither a Republican nor a pacifist. This debate is not whether or not the monarchy is on balance beneficial, and I do believe that there are some circumstances when military intervention is justified. Ladies and gentlemen, all we are saying on side proposition is that under no circumstances should the idea of Queen, should the idea of country be a consideration in the decision to go to war. It should not be a consideration for the soldier on the ground, the politician in the cabinet, or for the voter at the ballot box. On to my first point, that the conception of Queen and country does not involve fighting for anything substantive. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the monarchy? I am not doubting that our Queen has an extremely impressive record of public service, and that she plays a very important role in both our cultural and constitutional structure and heritage. However, the monarchy today seems increasingly difficult to fight for. Here are a few quotations from Prince Phillip, some humorous, some not so much. Quote, "So, who's on drugs here? He looks like he's on drugs," to a 14-year-old member of a Bangladeshi youth club in 2002. Quote, "And what exotic part of the world do you come from?" asked in 1999 of Tory politician Lloyd Taylor of Warwick, whose parents are Jamaican. He replied, quote, "Birmingham," unquote. But also, and less humorously, quote, "People usually say that after a fire, it is water damage that is the worst. We are still drying out Windsor Castle," unquote, to survivors of the Lockerbie bombings in 1993. Or, quote, "If a cricketer, for instance, suddenly decides to go into a school and batter a lot of people to death with a cricket bat, which he could do very easily, I mean, are you going to ban cricket bats?" unquote, in a Radio 4 interview shortly after the Dunblane shootings in 1996. The point of this is not for me to go Prince Philip bashing. It is to show that royals are just people. They can be honourable, they can be boring, they can be sensitive, and they can be ignorant. And bear that point in mind. Now on to country. When we think about Britain, we don't think about suburbs and unemployment, semi-detached houses and our local schools. What Britain is really like. We have this romantic conception of rolling hills, afternoon tea, and beautiful country houses. Ladies and gentlemen, why do we fight a war? Because war is a terrible thing with unbelievable human cost. We fight a war for the collective good of humanity. The collective good of humanity is not an elderly woman born into a hereditary title. It is not some romantic idea of the British Isles. This is the fundamental misconception, which sent 1 million people, needlessly, 1 million Britons, some of whose names are on that plaque over there, throwing their lives needlessly away at some empty metaphysical idea. Another quote from Prince Philip. "Any bloody fool can lay a wreath at the thingamy," referring to the cenotaph, laying a wreath at the cenotaph. Any bloody fool can do that. The idea that the monarchy and the nation are semi-divine is a con, ladies and gentlemen. Even Prince Philip knows it. To quote Wilfred Owen, "My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. I am sure this house would not want to once again repeat this lie." Now on to my second point. Queen and country is not just an illusory and insufficient concept. It is also a selfish and pernicious one. In All Quiet on the Western Front, Paul says to an enemy soldier, "But now, for the first time, I see you are a man like me. I thought of your hand grenades, of your bayonet, of your rifle. Now I see your wife and your face. We always see it too late. Why do they never tell us that you are just poor devils like us, that your mothers are just as anxious as ours, and that we have the same fear of death and the same dying and the same agony? Forgive me, comrade. How could you be my enemy?" How could you be my enemy, Madam President? Very simply, not because we disagree or because we have any incompatible visions which cannot be combined. No, because you, Madam President, were born in Russia. You, Mr. Treasurer, were born in Thailand. The concept of queen and country breeds hate and intolerance because it dehumanises our enemies. It tells us that we have a right to kill them because we are doing our duty for our country. It allows us to ignore rational arguments for or against a particular conflict. Why are scores of men content to kill and maim our enemies without knowing the intricacies of a conflict's cause? To spread freedom, democracy, and liberalism, or any other value we consider desirable? No, because they have bought the lie. They have bought the lie that there is such a thing as us and them, and that because they are fighting for their country, the welfare of others is irrelevant. And that's why the idea of queen and country is so pernicious. because it undermines the only possible justification for something as destructive and violent as armed conflict: the common good. Ladies and gentlemen, by walking out the no door tonight, you are saying that your country will always be right and their country will always be wrong. You are saying it is always right to fight for your country, irrespective of the cause it is fighting for. In 1939, Ronald McCullum, a fellow of Pembroke, was told this by a student who incidentally had voted with the proposition in 1933. This student was about to set off and join the fight against Hitler's Germany. And he said to Mr. McCullum, "I am not going to fight for king and country." And you will notice that no one, not Chamberlain, not Halifax, has asked us to. This is the crux of the argument. Fighting for your country is sometimes justifiable when your country is an actor supporting a cause you believe to be right, such as the fight against Hitler's tyranny. Fighting for your queen and country, because of the intrinsic value of these two concepts, though, is both pointless and, as I have shown, actively harmful. Ladies and gentlemen, there are things worth fighting for. Fight for justice, liberty, and democracy, like Ronald McCullum's student who voted with the proposition in 1933. If you must fight, fight for your friends, fight for your family, fight for the people you love, fight for the person sitting next to you who is just as valuable as any monarch. Fight for your fellow man, whomever he may be, in whatever country, in whatever nation, of whatever faith, creed, or ethnicity. But, I beg you, do not fight for queen and country. Do not fight for this construct dedicated simply to disguising our collective humanity. I beg you all to do this motion the justice it deserves and vote with the proposition tonight. Thank you very much.